two more elements to add. One is this salad logo. Now, rather than using the selection tools we've looked at so far, I'm going to Command R, make sure I have, oops, I had rulers. Command R, make sure you have rulers. And if you have rulers, you can drag a guideline. And I'm going to drag a guide right to the edge on the top and the side. I'm actually kind of like one fuzzy pixel in from the edge. And if I have that, and I take the elliptical selection tool and start right at the junction of these guides and drag, and now on this one, shift constrains. So shift to constrain and bring this down to here. Looks like I'm just outside. So I'm going to select, modify, contract by 1 pixel. Now I should be just inside. Looks pretty good. And on this one, I'm going to allow you to a destructive edit. So Command C, copy. Oh, look at that. There's nothing in that area because I'm on the wrong layer. When you do all of these layers, you have to be keenly aware of whether you're on art or a mask or the wrong layer. So this is the layer it's on. Command C, copy. And I'm now going to go above my first layer, actually the first group here, and Command V, paste it up here. I actually got it in the group. I'm going to drag this up above the group so it's outside the group. I need 2 more of those. I'll just Command V. So now I have 3 of those. And I want them over here somewhere. I want the bottom one there. And what I want to do is kind of make these look like they're coming forward and getting larger. So Command T, transform. And again, without holding the shift key, it constrains. So I'm going to enlarge that some. And this one, Command T, make that one halfway between those two. And the one thing I forgot to do, these are kind of weird looking colors. And if you look at the final example, it's a nice set of greens, and you could do that playing around with adjustment layers and stuff like that. But these happen to be the true complements of the greens that you see in the final. So if you Command I, invert color, Command I, invert color, Command I, invert color, you get the colors that you see in the final shown on the instructions sheet. I'm going to go back to this one, Command T, and make this just a little bit bigger. Now, I talked something about depth of field on 5B, the statue and the tulips. Here's a place you can play around with that. So for example, if I convert this for smart filters, I'll do the same with this one. And I might not bother with that one. On this one, filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And this was at 3 the last time I used it. I think I'll leave that there for now. This one, filter, Gaussian blur, and make this one 1.5. I think it might need to be 2. And they appear to be coming forward because the farthest one is out of focus. You can also do something based on hue, saturation, and brightness to make objects recede or come forward. So for example, on this one, if I Command click on this, add a filter to it, when you have a smart filter, you automatically get a mask layer. Command Shift I, invert the selection, and fill this mask with my foreground color, which is black, again using Alt or Option and the backspace or delete key. And then I can add an adjustment layer to this smart layer, hue and saturation, and slightly desaturate this. And perhaps shift the color a little more to blue, because blue tends to recede. Like my layer palette, I need this mask there. Shift I. And I can do the same to this one. Command click on this. Adjustment layer, hue, saturation, and brightness, and desaturate this one slightly. Command click on this one. And if I could make that a little more yellow, that would probably bring it forward. So command click on this one. I've got that mask, and add a hue, saturation, brightness layer. And if I have any yellows in here, I do have yellow in that lighter green. And you notice if I bring this saturation up a little on the yellows, it gives me a little more contrast of that lighter green against the darker green. If I did something with the greens, that would probably change everything too much. And if I go for blues, okay, so there's a way to make those seem to be receding or coming forward. Two more objects, it's the cutting board and the caret. I'm going to do the cutting board first because it's going to tell us how we want to arrange the caret. Going to my cutting board, I'm going to turn all of these other layers off by just running my finger along these eyeballs, poke each one in the eyeball so that I can't see them or they can't see me. Close the groups, save some time turning things back on again. Group each of my olives. These are olives down here. Command G, olives. Okay, back to the cutting board. How do I make this look like it's in perspective? It's really fairly simple. I need to select the cutting board, and I'll go wide around it, not too wide. Command C, copy, Command V, paste, and then I want to turn off all of this other stuff. I don't need that right now. I'm going to move it over here a little bit so I've got some room to work. Command T, transform, right-click on this and perspective, and just drag this out so I've got a cutting board that looks like it's sitting on a counter. I'm standing above it. I'm looking at it at about a 45-degree angle, and it should look something like this. Only thing is, it's a really thin-looking cutting board. So let's get this masked, and I'll take the quick select tool and get inside the handle and the shadow in there and get all of this and all of that outside. Magic wand tool and click here. Okay, so that's absolutely everything except the cutting board. Command Shift I, invert the selection. So that's my cutting board. Command Option R, get into my adjustments, and I'll go with like a 1 pixel feather, 2 pixel feather. Now here we can go for more smoothing because everything on this one should be kind of smooth and there's no fine details at the edge. Everything else I think I can leave alone. I might shift the edge in -20. That shouldn't be too noticeable and it should keep me from going to white or gray. I'll say okay and make a mask. What I do to give this a little better illusion of 3D is make the cutting board thicker. And the way I do it is to duplicate the cutting board. And then again, I'm using the arrows on the keyboard. Shift this up a bit. However thick I feel that that cutting board should be. I'm going to say it should be about this thick. Now, what I have to do is paint in here so that this looks like an extension of that cutting board. Make sure I'm on this layer with the eyedropper, select the dark green. And on the bottom layer with my brush, paint across here. And I think I showed you this trick before, where if I click here, hold the Shift key and click over here, it should paint all the way across. Same in here. Click here, hold the Shift key, it should paint all the way across. Now to make it a clean looking perspective, you may have to go over here and about there to there, scoot that in a little bit, give that a 1 pixel feather. Is that what I used before? Close enough. And on the mask, paint in white, because that'll fill in that little missing corner. Likewise, over on this side, I need to fill in about from there to there. Feather. Scoot that in and up a little bit. Oops. Here's what I was telling you. You got to be careful that you don't have your move tool selected if you want to start scooting things around, because it will cut. So I'm going to go back to feather before I did the nudge, make sure I'm on a selection tool, and use my arrow keys to scoot that in a little bit so I don't end up with something weird. Paintbrush, again, on the mask, paint white in there to make sure that that blends there. Okay, I have a little bit of a white halo there at the edge that I don't much care for. I'd rather that blended a little better. So again, on the top mask, I'm going to take the black paintbrush, and I want to do this fairly small and completely soft. Well, maybe not completely soft. Let's try 14. And I'm going to, on the mask, click here, click there, paint across there. It doesn't look quite right. So flip these, and with a white brush, I'm going to paint that back in where I just screwed up that corner. That's a 3D cutting board, but maybe it'd look a little better if it had some soft highlights on it to indicate that it was a somewhat shiny surface. Not a really shiny surface, but maybe just somewhat shiny, sort of a semi-gloss. So again, I want my white paintbrush. I want to be on this art instead of on the mask. Reduce my opacity considerably and make this smaller. What I want to do is probably put a highlight right here across that edge. Oops, Command Z, but I've got to do this in white. I could do it in white or like a very light green. Let's try white. Click here and click there to get a highlight. If I want that a little softer, I can reduce the hardness here. Maybe go up a little in the size. Let's go across here again. Still at only 18% opacity. And likewise here. And then go back down to 15 and 10 hardness. And click from here, and then hold the shift key and click over here to give me a little harder edge. And I'm gonna have to like freehand these around the corner here, which again, with a mouse, it's not the easiest thing to draw. Somewhere around there. And likewise here and there. You make those 25 and 0, and go and soften this again with a little more white. I'm not too happy about that result either. What I probably should have done is actually do this retouching on a different layer. Go back to here before I painted that in. I'm going to add a layer, put that above that. Link these layers and Command G, put them in a group, cutting board. And on this layer, it wasn't unusual in the old days when we retouched with gouache to have 2 photographic prints and do one for practice, so you know exactly how you wanted to do the second one. So I've just done this once in a way that I didn't like, and I'm going to do it over on a separate layer so that I can more easily do editing on it. I had the paintbrush with a 25 pixel, 0 hardness white brush at 18%, and making sure I'm on a new layer. Paint from here, lightly overlap that from here to there. And from here to here. Incidentally, if you want to make sure you're actually going on a straight line, you could put a guideline in there, and I probably should have. Or you can watch these little tick marks on the side that show exactly where you are on a ruler, and say if it was always at 4 3/8 inch, and go across and make sure I'm at 4 3/8 inch when I click on the other side. Of course, the guides are a little annoying when you're trying to see what you're doing with small lines, but that's okay. I went back in at 15 and a hardness of 14 or 15, and click over that. I'm going to get rid of those guidelines so I can actually see what I'm doing now. And now that I'm on a separate layer, don't sample all layers. When I do my blur, I could blur this a little or use the smudge tool. Kind of drag that a little bit this way so I don't get that little hard spot at the end there, although I'm not terribly concerned about it. Or I could take a soft eraser and just kind of erase that little hard spot and then come back with my paintbrush and try to very carefully follow that curve. Maybe you want a bigger brush, really soft, and you could put a little highlight on the edge here. On this side, I don't know if you'd get a highlight on that side, little backfill reflection or something perhaps, but maybe on that side it should be half as dense. So I could Command Shift F and get fade, and my opacity was at 9 on that one. I could change the opacity to maybe 12 on this side. Preview, on, off. And I might, on the lower board, want a little bit of, let's go really soft and a little narrower, and just put a little highlight in there. So on this layer, I need to take out a little bit of green there from my smudge. With my eraser on this layer, take out some of that green from my smudge. Let's see how that looks. It's okay. It may not be great, but it's okay. So there's my 3D cutting board. Let's turn some things back on. I'm not going to turn, well, yeah, I need the carrots. I'll turn that back on. I want my cutting board group over here. Olives about here. And my labels. I turn off auto select because it really annoys me sometimes. Grab my labels and pull them down here a bit. I'll auto select the lettuce and move it back up some. And I think I'm going to grab my peppers and move them back a little bit. Okay, so that's most of my composition. I need a carrot. I'm going to select the entire rectangle of the carrot just inside there a little bit. Command C, copy, Command V, paste. I want the carrot on the top, so I'm going to drag the carrot up here to the top. Let it be the top layer. Command T, transform. I'm going to rotate it over this way. And I want it leaning on the edge of the cutting board right here. I might have to make it a little bigger. I might want it slightly in perspective. Let's try that. And now that I've rotated it, the light is on the wrong side. So what I want for the carrot is a non-destructive dodge and burn. And you know, that means adding a dodge and burn layer. Before we do that, let's get the mask set up because I can use the mask for the dodge and burn as well. And for this one, try any selection tool you would like, but I would say probably the magnetic lasso tool works best on this. And that's because I can tell it exactly where I want some hard spots. I need to kind of be careful following along here. If I miss, I can always go back and fix it. Right there, I want to go around the little root end of that. You click into some of these little indentations here. And again, you know, my mouse sometimes kind of jerks on my table. So those are some things I'm going to have to go back and fix. I'll take the quick select tool, hold the option key, option or alt key to minus the selection. I'm on a plus quick select, so if I just don't push any buttons, it will add to the selection. And option R or Control Alt R give it that same selection I've been using and make a mask.